Zen, truth means seeing reality as it is, without any projections. Sky is blue, grass is green, water is wet.
Knowing that our experience is internal means that we are less attached to the external world, which the Buddhists have never denied. They are not nihilist. They've never said that there's nothing out there.
This conditioned thinking mind is composed of greed, anger, and ignorance. So therefore, when you see the world, perceive the world in this way, there's always a separation from the subject and the object. The word Buddhism comes from Bud, means to be awake. So actually we would usually say Buddha Dharma, awaken to the truth.
Buddha's teaching is so simple. His whole teaching we can just put in 2 lines. What he said, first of all, when he was dying and in his deathbed, he told his closest disciple Ananda, be mindful. And when he started teaching, abstain from evil, do good, purify your mind.
Buddhism, historically the religion of millions of Asians, is a name derived from the Buddha, a spiritual leader in ancient India. The term Buddha means a fully enlightened person, and Buddhism has become the religion and/or a life philosophy of millions who are guided by this ancient tradition in seeking spiritual enlightenment. A child named Siddhartha was born in northeast India about 560 BCE. His father, Suddhodana, was head of the Gautama family and chieftain of the Shakya warrior caste clan in the foothills of modern Nepal. The son would later be called Gautama Buddha, then Shakyamuni Buddha, the sage of the Shakya clan. Thus the birth of Siddhartha Gautama, like that of Jesus and Muhammad, has been the subject of much elaboration, even including an account of a supernatural conception. One night, Siddhartha's mother dreamed that when a white elephant's trunk touched her side, she became pregnant. The unborn Buddha, then existing 4 cosmic levels above the human plane of existence, in the heaven of the satisfied gods, had been waiting for a pure and worthy mother to appear on earth. Siddhartha grew up in splendid palaces, waited upon by bevies of pretty young women. When he reached the proper age, Siddhartha was married to a beautiful cousin, and the good life continued until his 29th year. Then a radical change occurred. Siddhartha saw that sickness and death await us all. His elation about life vanished. In particular, his upbringing taught him to believe in continuing rebirth throughout endless ages to come. In this context, the prospect of eternally repetitive sickness and dying became horrendous. Some Pali sources even involve the ancient Indian gods in a more dynamic account of Siddhartha's quest. Here the gods determine that the young Siddhartha must be freed from the cozy cocoon of a prince's life. Siddhartha returned to his palace in an agitated state of mind. His father immediately set up guards all around the palaces and added further luxuries. But the gods were not to be denied. They again approached Siddhartha, disguised as a sick man, then as a corpse, and finally as an ascetic who had found peace within mortal suffering. The die was cast. Siddhartha now decided to become an ascetic. He returned to his palace, at peace within himself, only to learn that his son had been born. Thus Siddhartha had become bonded to the ordinary life of man. But he refused to be bound to the ordinary world any longer. With the connivance of the gods, he silently bid goodbye to his sleeping wife and son, fled the palace, and became an ascetic. he became a disciple of two noted ascetic masters. Under their tutelage, he achieved the so-called trance of nothingness. Then he reached a trance that's called neither perception nor non-perception. For 6 years, Siddhartha practiced severe austerity and extreme mortification. Some observers reported that the gaunt and debilitated ascetic was dead. Later images by Buddhist artists make the ascetic Siddhartha look like a skin-covered skeleton.
You have to be very, very fortunate enough, and your practice should be so high that a day will come, you'll be fortunate enough to meet a Buddha like our Gautama Buddha. When he was practicing as a Sumedho, the ascetic, at that time he met Dipankara Buddha, who gave him all the blessings and all the boon that, oh my son, you will be a Buddha one day like me.
While holding his breath as a technique to control his body, Gautama felt as though a strap were being twisted ever more tightly around his head. But to his surprise, this was the important clue. Clear mindfulness, not the pain of ascetic practice, is the key to spiritual understanding.
It is a difficult thing to determine exactly how we should look at Buddhism. Some people see it as a philosophy, and there are certainly philosophical texts. But in many ways, when one reads the texts of Buddhism, we see that it is a psychology. It is almost a physiology. It talks about how we perceive the world. So that in some sense, some people would ask the question of whether or not Buddhism is, in our ordinary sense, a religion. I think the answer must certainly be that it is. It has all the attributes of religious practice. It does have the monasteries, the altars, the holy people, those people who are set aside to practice particular rituals and rites.
Gautama made a key decision that would give Buddhists the basis for calling their outlook the middle way. To sustain his bodily strength, he took a small amount of food from the lay people who always hover around ascetics in India. Yet to avoid sensual desire, he continued to resist attachment to flavors or tastes. Here then are the beginnings of the Buddhist meditative pattern for those who wish to reach nirvana, an ultimate state of freedom from the unending and wearisome cycle of lives called samsara. According to the Buddha, Siddhartha now found himself emotionally indifferent to either joy or aversion. This is the key mood of Buddhist enlightenment, to gain detached mastery over both negative and positive emotions. The Buddhist way is to master both hate and love, fear and confidence, desire and aversion, the opposing emotions that keep the individual bound to the perpetual wheel of rebirth. It is a sharp, clear awareness of the thoughts, impulses and emotions that arise within one's own self. An enlightened one can judge situations without self-interest. He or she is unswayed by self-regarding emotions, observing clearly and dispassionately.
The big question for every ascetic is always whether or not to become a spokesperson in terms of a teacher of others. Is it possible to teach someone something which they themselves have not experienced? Can I ever explain to somebody what a strawberry tastes like if they've never tasted a strawberry? So that many ascetics simply do not teach because it's